Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. First off, let me start off and say to those who have subscribed, I sincerely thank you for coming along and joining this small little footprint that I've created on the old interweb. And by the way, I hope everybody's doing well out there. And before we really get into what I'm going to talk about today, hit the subscribe button. Throw a like, throw a comment. I have a Patreon account that I'll put a link on. Check that out. Let's get a community started of like-minded people that love music, want to talk guitar gear. Let's do that. So, today's going to be a little different. Usually, I talk about an album or a guitar-related thing, pedals, whatever. But today, as I sit here and film this, it is October the 20th of 2021. And why is that date significant? To most people, it may be your birthday. It may be a lot of things. But on this day in 1977 in Gillsburg, Mississippi, Leonard Skinner's chartered plane crashed, killing Cassie Gaines, which was a backup singer, Steve Gaines, which was a guitar player, Dean Kirkpatrick, who was a road manager, and sadly, the lead singer of Leonard Skinner and its founding father, basically, Ronnie VanZant. Now, for today's video and topic, Ronnie VanZant is what I want to focus on. And what would Ronnie VanZant have done with his career if he had survived the crash? If the crash had never happened, what would he be doing today? That's what I want to kind of get into. So let me give you a little history about my connection with Leonard Skinner. And folks, I am not a Leonard Skinner historian. I am not an expert. I just want to put that out there. VanZant died in 77, so he would have been gone 4 years, roughly, before I was even thought of or born. So I never had the opportunity to see Ronnie VanZant on stage. Now, he did give us a body of work. The original Leonard Skinner lineup gave us some great songs, some legendary songs. They gave us some great studio albums, a fantastic live album that I feel is in the top 20 of live albums. I'll mention that here in a minute. And that they gave us a body of work that is still listened to today and is the foundation for a band that is on the road today called Leonard Skinner. I'll get into that here in a minute also. So, what would Ronnie VanZant have done if Skinner had crashed? Now, like I said, my personal connection as a young kid, or a teenager I should say, in my early teens, my next door neighbor one day knocks on the door. Hey, I got tickets for Leonard Skinner, who is coming to town. Now, I had been listening to Leonard Skinner a bunch. I don't really remember how I discovered Leonard Skinner. I have an older brother. That wasn't really his thing at the time. Skinner was not something that was like playing around the house. So, to be honest, I can't remember where or when I heard my first Leonard Skinner song. But I digress. So Skinner's rolling through my hometown, or close to my hometown, and it was Paul Rogers from Bad Company Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Double Trouble, who was hot at the time, and then Leonard Skinner headline at our local college's basketball arena. And we so happen to have been on the right side of the stage, if you're facing the stage, a few rows back, right where Gary Rosington is. So the show starts. Paul Rogers was pretty good. He did the Bad Company stuff. Kenny Wayne Shepherd was playing stuff off of his current album, and then Leonard Skinner comes out. At the time, this was the 20 tour. They had an album that was called 20, and it was kind of celebrating not celebrating, but remembering the 20th anniversary of the plane crash that killed the people that I mentioned earlier. Skinner comes out, does their thing, and during that set, a spotlight hits Gary Rosington, and they go into the opening of Tuesday's Gone, and at that moment, my life was changed dramatically forever. At that moment, watching Gary Rosington stand on that stage and play Tuesday's Gone, I had to have a guitar, so I had to get a JOB, and once I did that, I went and got a Strat. I didn't know what a Strat was at that time. Got a music store, sold me the guitar, and my journey to learn guitar had begun. And if Gary had ever heard me play, or him or Dickie Betts, then I'd probably be sued and be broke because I stole just about every lick that they have. But anyways, so that got me into my obsession with Leonard Skinner. Now, I had no idea about the plane crash. I thought who I was watching on stage was Leonard Skinner. At the time, it was about 85% Leonard Skinner. Leon Wilkinson, the bass player, was still alive. Billy Powell, the keyboard player, was still alive. Of course, Gary. Artemis Pyle was not on that tour. And then Ricky Medlock was on guitar. Huey Thomason was the third guitarist from the Outlaws. And then Ronnie VanZant was on vocals. So there was a core group there that was original Leonard Skinner. And let me say that I have tried every way under God's green earth and sun to meet Gary Rosington. I have seen Leonard Skinner 30 plus times. I've been kicked out of backstages. I've been borderline obsession, as my wife says, to try to meet Gary Rosington, and it's just never happened. The universe has a reason. I don't know. I've met some other heroes of mine. I met Greg Allman, Billy Gibbons, but I've never had the opportunity to meet Gary Rosington, and I have to admit sometimes it fucks with me. But anyways, back to what I think Ronnie VanZant would be doing. So if we examine the body of work that VanZant gave us, one thing that bothers me is the stereotype of the Southern rock moniker. And if you've watched my videos on this channel, I cannot stand the term Southern rock. And I know everybody uses the term, people, oh, it's Southern rock, it sounds like Southern rock, this guy's Southern rock, that's Southern rock, the dishes are Southern rock, mopping the floor is Southern rock. I can't stand that term. Mainly because it's just rock and roll, right? And it's just rock and roll that came from the region of the country that is in the South. But it was a term that record labels generated to sell records because it was hot at the time, and they didn't really know what the sound was that was coming out. You had, you got to remember in the late 60s, early 70s, which is before my time, not an expert, like I said, but if you go back and listen, with your Jerry Lee and all that, it was coming out of Memphis, and the blues, and the British invasion with the Stones and the Beatles and this and that. It was a different sound. The Allman Brothers basically generated this sound, birthed this sound. I don't think they knew what to call it. They couldn't. I think they should have just called it rock. But some A&R guy, some record label, sitting at his desk trying to make some coin, said, "Oh, we'll call it Southern rock." I can't stand that term. But anyways, so VanZant and the guys form this band. And their influences, oddly enough, were the Stones and Cream and bands like that, Free. Um, and Van Zant was like Jimmy Rogers and Merle Haggard and those influences. So that's that melting pot of those guys. Hearing that and all that gave us what they were, and you can hear those influences on a bunch of songs. Like Alan Collins, one of the original guitar players. Some of his solos are very like Cream, Eric Clapton, Yardbirds oriented, and then Gary Ross is the same way. Ed King, one of the original guitar players, was in a band called Strawberry Alarm Clock. He kind of had his own thing going, but it was like a California kind of feel, but he meshed really well. But anyways, Ronnie, one of the reasons I hate the Southern Rock moniker is the guys in that band do not get the respect that they deserve, I think, because of the Confederate flag waving connotation that comes with what the record labels labeled them as Southern Rock. Southern Rock, or their version of rock, I think they were poor. They grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. Their words, not mine. Again, I didn't know them, but just reading about them, they were all poor. They were all just come from blue collar families, working class families. Rosington's father, there's not much info on him, but I think he was killed in the army. I think Van Zant's dad was a truck driver. You know, I mean, you're just talking poor America, right, in Jacksonville, Florida. So lyrically, that's the feeling that you get from Van Zant is just everyday American life, right? Of course, we all know that Sweet Home Alabama was a clapback at Neil Young for his album Harvest, you know, the Southern Man and Alabama and all that. Freebird was kind of they in concert they would dedicate it to Dwayne Allman, but they wrote it before Dwayne's death. You know, it has some stories behind it. Tuesday's Gone, all that. The thing I want you guys to do if you watch this is those original studio albums. Dig into some of the cuts that you don't hear all the time. Like my favorite Leonard Skinner song is the Railroad Song off of Nothing Fancy. And that gives you a really good sense of Van Zant as a songwriter and his influences. Right? And he even mentions, you know, Merle Haggard and Jimmy Rogers. Also, like Made in the Shade. They have a ton of songs that are not the radio, you know, and the current incarnation of Leonard Skinner doesn't even touch those songs. And I can name a bunch of them, but I really want you guys, if you watch this, to dig into Skinner's catalog, get past Sweet Home Alabama and that song about that bird that's free, and really dig in, right? So, Van Zant. Van Zant does not get the credit that he deserves, in my opinion, as a singer, as a songwriter. Currently, as I film this, like I said, October 20th, 2021, Netflix has a great Leonard Skinner documentary. It's kind of Gary's side of the story with interviews throughout the band. It was really well done. It was done for Showtime when I first saw it. I'll post a picture of it so you can check it out. But one, Van Zant never wrote anything down, which myself playing music, I put that in high regard. Like, that's ridiculous that the guy never wrote any lyrics down. He stated that if it wasn't good enough to remember, then it wasn't good. And I mean, how many artists do you know that don't write lyrics down? The guy was like 5'7", you know, rough, fighting, drinking, all that. But he had gotten clean toward the end of their career or into his run. And his vocal, like, as far as singers go, he's never really mentioned as a great singer, but the guy could sing his ass off. He proved that time and time. You see all the footage of him when they're clean and they're rolling, that his vocal is great. There's a new remastered show where they open for the Rolling Stones from Kibbenworth Fair, where they are just smoking. And they smoke the Stones. To me, they smoked the Stones like right off the stage that day. And his vocal, the band is on, and his vocal is as good as any. Um, Even One More from the Road, which was produced by Tom Dowd. That's their lone live album with that original lineup. Dowd had done the Fillmore East, so they wanted Dowd to do it. And he was known, he would set up mics and then they'd go in the studio and overdub, which is a trick that he would use. But even he stated that they didn't do hardly any touch up on Ronnie's vocals. And you can hear in Simple Man on that album where his vocal is so clean, so pure, and he's just giving you his soul, right? So he just is underrated as a vocalist. So what would he be doing if he was still alive? Let's get to that. So let's say the plane doesn't go down. They make it to Louisiana that night. They play the gig at LSU, and on they go. I would like to think that at some point Ronnie would want to do a country album solo. Not break up Leonard Skinner, not, oh, I'm leaving or whatever, but just, hey, my name's Ronnie VanZant, and here are my influences, and I want to write and do a country album. And I think that he would do something that would be, Merle Haggard kind of country, where it would be stripped down, not so much rock, just real good, like, solid country, right? And I think that in that era, after his last Skinner album, Street Survivors, he was producing that album himself. A lot of people, I don't think, realize that he produced Street Survivors. Tom Dowd had did it, and they weren't happy with it, and VanZant basically fired him and kicked him out because of the way the album sounds. I've stated in videos before, I was not a fan of Dowd's like studio work. Some good examples is like Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, and in the Leonard Skinner album, Give Me Back My Bullets. They're very sterile to me. His studio stuff is very sterile. He had a great ear. I'm not knocking the guy's ear. I'm not knocking his engineering skills or the studios that he built, because he built one of the most technologically advanced studios at the time, Criteria, in Miami, that you can still visit. But him behind the board was just sterile. So VanZant fires him and he produces it. So it would have been interesting if VanZant would have lived to do a country album where he produced it, writing the songs, bringing in a different band. As much as I love Gary and Alan and all those guys, I would have loved to have heard him with a stripped down like acoustic band. I think his friendship with Charlie Daniels, a lot of people don't realize how big of friends that they were. I think his friendship with Charlie Daniels, he probably would have brought Charlie in to play some fiddle or play guitar, because Charlie Daniels was a monster guitar player and people overlooked that. And maybe they would have done some kind of collaboration on an album, and that would have been phenomenal too. Maybe he would have wrote with his heroes. Everybody wants to be around their heroes, so maybe he would have gotten the chance to write with Merle Haggard to like that Bakersfield sound and VanZant's Jacksonville background. That would have been an interesting album of music, even if they only wrote a couple of cuts with each other. What would Leonard Skinner do? I think Leonard Skinner would have kept trucking, and just from reading VanZant's personality, I think he would have cut the bullshit out and they would have all been cleaned up. Now, that smell off of Street Survivors is basically a jab toward Gary Rosington, where Rosington had got messed up and wrecked a car, broke his hands and all this, cut his face up. I think he probably would have had enough. I think they had enough of that excess on the road. Now, you got to remember, when he died, he was only 30. He wasn't even 30. He was 29. Because he always told everybody, I'll never see 30. The guy kind of knew his destiny, right? Which is heavy to think about. But they would have gotten cleaned up and been going into the 80s, they would have been in their prime. right when the Southern thing kind of had a explosion. Now, I would hate to have heard Skinner produced in the 80s with that kind of 80s sound that you get, like 38 Special and Molly Hatchet and all that. That I wouldn't have want to hear. I wouldn't want to hear that. But I think they would have had, because they were just on the tip of a huge surge in their career. I think through the 80s they would have been a big band. They were on the cusp of being a big band when the plane crashed. I think that's what's so tragic about it, is they had been road dogs for so many years and played so many dates that they were right there at it. So I think as far as Leonard Skinner goes, of course we don't have the crash. I think he would have, he being their father figure leader would have straightened him up. Maybe Alan Collins doesn't have the car wreck that paralyzes him. You know, it's hard to say, but I think he either would have I think he would have gave him the ultimatum: y'all need to straighten up or you can get out. I really think that way. As far as, like I said, music, I feel like the thing about Leonard Skinner now that I'm not a huge fan of is and please don't blow me up for this. This is going to be a controversial statement. I know it, but it's time to quit. It's time for them to hang up their guitars, and it's time for them to move on. And ladies and gentlemen, I am as much as a Leonard Skinner fan. Like I said, I've seen him 30 plus times in every lineup incarnation that you can imagine. But the band that's on the road now, I can't do it. I can't do it. Currently, as I film this, they're touring without Gary. It's just wrong to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I feel that way. Actually, I'm not. I'm not going to apologize for it. I just, without Rosington, it's not Leonard Skinner. It's not Leonard Skinner. They're playing the same set they've been playing for the last 30 years as this incarnation. I mean, I hate it. I hate it. I hate to say it, but it's time to hang it up. Great musicians, not knocking that. But would they have gotten into if you listen to the current lineup's musical output, now there's some great songs by that band. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple albums I really like Vicious Cycle, Edge of Forever, but they're real heavy. It's okay. I get it. God and Guns, the album God and Guns, they kind of co-wrote some stuff with John 5. It's super heavy, tuned down guitars. I don't know if VanZant would have gotten into that. I don't know with his demeanor and mentality, I think they would have kept. They probably, to me, would have been a Blackberry Smoke. What Blackberry Smoke is today, Skinner probably would have turned into, or not turned into, but continuated doing what they do with their country influence and all that. So what would they have done today? I think VanZant would have kept them on that road. I don't think they would have went down the heavy riff way, but that's me. Y'all might disagree. If you do, please comment. That's cool. That's cool. What would we have seen? I think we would have seen tours, I think we would have seen tours with the Allman Brothers. I think we would have seen them finally get where they could play a few stadiums in the 80s. I think they would have been that big. They were getting there. They had played the Liberty Bowl. They had played overseas. They had played Tokyo, Japan, all these places. So, yeah. In conclusion, I think that Ronnie, if he was still alive, Ronnie would have gotten the respect nationwide, globally, that I think he deserves as a vocalist and a songwriter. I think he would have given us some great albums, solo albums, and I think Leonard Skinner would be as relevant today as anything. And I think when the guys started to pass on like they have, like Billy Powell and Leon and those guys, Ronnie may have kept going, but I think with Gary and Alan, they were such good friends that if something happened to one of them, like it has, like Gary's heart trouble and Alan passing away, I would like to think that his loyalty to them wouldn't have kept it going. And again, I hate to say that. I hate to knock, you know, the current incarnation of Leonard Skinner, because I love the music. Like I said, if it wasn't for their music, I would have never picked the guitar up. But I don't think he would have continued as Leonard Skinner without those guys, out of respect. And I get that the current connotation is doing it out of respect, but I don't know if Ronnie would have done that. Well, there you go. There's my thoughts on it. It really bothers me that Ronnie's been gone for 44 years. I never got the chance to see him. I've met very few people that have told me that they have saw the original Leonard Skinner. And every time that the few people that I met that have seen them, they say the same thing, that they were phenomenal, that Ronnie was as good live or better, the way that he stalked the stage, the way that he controlled the mic stand, just his overall demeanor. So that's cool. So there you go. Comment below. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Thumbs up. Go over to the Patreon page. Hit that up. Let's get a conversation started. Stay safe. And remember that music is love. And love is music.